My name's Don.
And I'm Peter.
And we are two plebs talking about... California.
This week in the DPRC.
Oh, yeah. You know, I very rarely get something that is so delicious I can't wait to talk about it. And I've had this sitting here for, I think, 5 days now.
Oh, no.
So, California is the climate change green hippie capital of the world.
Right.
Is that fair?
We've got the most stringent clean air laws. You know, I would say we surpassed what the federal regulations were.
Yeah, always, right? We have our own Clean Air Act because we decided that the feds wasn't good enough, and the prior administration just let us do whatever we want with that, and on and on and on, right?
Right.
Well, so there's been this agency that's been tracking air quality,
right,
as it were, for something like 20, 30 years. No, I think it's since the 70s.
Okay.
And California has had the top spot of dirtiest air in the country 19 out of 20 of the years tracked, or 19 of the most 20, or 20 most recent years tracked.
Okay.
In just Los Angeles.
Wow.
And the only time they lost it, they moved down to second for New York City.
Okay.
But we're winners in California, so the next year we came back and we took that thing right back.
But, okay, we already know why. We hear it all the time.
Hold on. So, we also hold religiously 10 of the top 25 worst air quality cities in the country.
Okay.
And in the top 10, all 20 of those years was LA, San Francisco, and Sacramento.
Okay.
And so, we're super good at doing clean air things, but not really.
Right.
Apparently. And so, of course, this just means we need to do more, whatever that means.
Right.
But we know why all the time. Why?
It's the inversion layer, man.
Well, it is the inversion layer, right?
Right.
So this is, I mean, oh God, it's probably been 6 months since we said this, except when I threw it out on Twitter. So what you're saying is we could just strap air cleaners to the top of skyscrapers in Los Angeles and probably clean most of the air of the world.
Right. As we've said before, there's a good chance of that being a thing.
Right.
But apparently, as I've heard from listeners of our show, it used to look a lot worse.
Yeah, that's certainly true. LA used to have worse air quality than it does now. That's exciting.
I mean, but that just shows that there has been improvement over time.
Yeah, kind of. So we ran into a wall here in California in the 80s, and we've never really gotten any better since then, right?
Okay.
So, and look, some people, but it's slightly better sometimes. Yeah, I got it. But in, I think somewhere in the late 80s, we hit pretty much the peak of how much we could clean the air here because China started producing a lot of pollution. And if you go watch that air tract, right, China over to Alaska, down to California, and then it stops in the inversion layer and just hangs out there.
So it's not really our pollution.
Usually not, right? I mean, some of it is going to be. You can't have 5 million people or whatever in Los Angeles driving cars, doing things without creating at least some quantity of pollution. On the other hand,
there's a good portion of that pollution that does not come from the USA at all.
Right. And so, no joke, I think my 7th grade math teacher said, you know, when I was a kid, I had this great idea that we should carve off the top of the mountains, put a bunch of fans out there, and just blow it out over the plains, and it'd be fine. He's not wrong, right? I mean, at least California's air pollution would get better. Southern California's, anyhow.
Right.
Which eventually would bleed off Northern California's.
Right.
So that, you know, you didn't have all that stuff down there, and then it just kind of backing up and going further up the state, and all these kinds of things, which is what happened back in something like the 40s. So, you know, sure, eventually you would fix a lot of California problems. On the other hand, there are reports from people who came out here during the gold rush about how Los Angeles area had pollution in the air.
Back then?
Now, they didn't say, the air is polluted, but they described the sunset that you only get in Los Angeles because of the pollution in the air.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, the one that goes away on days that don't have as much pollution sitting in the air. So we know it was there, but something, it's all our fault now.
Obviously, it was our fault then. The inversion layer was just doing its thing and holding every bit that came its way.
Shocking. It's almost like if there was a big fire in China, it just hung out in Los Angeles.
Yeah. A lot of people don't look into this stuff into that great of detail. They just scream climate change and we need to change things. Like, okay, get China to stop polluting.
Yeah, that would be a good first step, right?
Right.
Though, on the other hand, I do appreciate that California is driving this idea that the U.S. needs to entirely get rid of carbon emissions because it will fix the problem, and then telling China, go ahead and keep polluting. Because no matter what they do, they will still have horrible pollution, and they will destroy the lives of Californians. And this is funnier to me because I'm leaving.
Right.
But nothing will change.
No.
So, in a truly exciting moment for me, California is now a little upset about this, right?
Right.
In a shocking turn of events. And mostly what the actual report here is just that the guys that Metric Air Quality were like, well, look, you're still terrible, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just... The only people who ever compete with you are New York City.
Right.
And you're talking smaller cities than them, spread out over much more space, and your air quality is just as bad, if not worse.
Right.
And so, as per usual, nothing will matter other than we need more windmills.
Obviously. Because it'll blow all of that nasty stuff out.
Well, they're not fans, right?
Oh, no, it won't, will it?
And so, what we will get is, well, if we just had windmills, this would solve the problem. Now, by the way, without that big wind that goes through China over the top of the Pacific and down the coastline,
right,
the windmills wouldn't work.
No, they wouldn't.
I mean,
and without all the pollution created by mining for neodymium from China,
we probably wouldn't have the windmills.
We wouldn't have the windmills.
So, the best part of this is that we're going to demand more windmills, which is going to create more pollution for California.
Right.
Because it's the only thing that's even remotely viable here, right? We tried in the really early 2000s to do those ocean tide pump things, right? You know, as the tide comes in,
yes,
right, and it produces power, and great, and that's wonderful. And then all of California went, no, you can't do that.
Why not?
Well, because you'll destroy the beaches, in my view. Seriously.
Well, I know you're serious.
And so, the only available answer was windmills. Now, by the way, California has an area where you can mine all of the things that would permit you to make windmills.
Yeah.
Specifically neodymium, as I recall, but the rare earth metals that everyone's worried about, any of them. We have mines for them here in California that we shut down sometime in like the 80s because something pollution.
Right.
Now, even in the 80s, we were ridiculously huge amounts more clean than China is now.
Right.
So instead of creating a little bit here that we would have cleaned up and managed because we're a bunch of hippies, we went, why don't we just have China do this?
Well, that does seem to be the thing for California. Like, well, we need power, but we're not going to build enough infrastructure for power, so we'll start buying it from other states who will use the means that we say we refuse to use to generate said power for us. Well, we need windmills, but we don't want the rare earths. China, why don't you go ahead and create all the pollution and do that for us?
Right.
So that we can say, no, see, we're living the clean, hippie lifestyle. We're just making the rest of the world do the dirty work for us.
Exactly. right? And I mean, look, that's exactly what we're doing and going to do, and apparently that's going to be great. And somehow or another, no one pauses to go, haven't we been doing this clean air thing for 50 years now? Mm-hmm. Didn't it just stop being effective after about 10? Just no one. Doesn't matter.
No, we're still trying.
Right? And so, I mean, we're just going to keep doing that.
Quitters never win, Don.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I think every time I see someone just pounding their head into a 2x4. It's like, hey, you'll get that 2x4 eventually.
Right. Or how about we just try a different tact? I'm not saying give up, but
right.
Change tact.
Right. Like, I don't know. Get a sledgehammer. Not even an axe, just a sledgehammer.
Right.
You'll brunt force through that guy eventually. No? Forehead? All right.
Right. No. We need to get some of those CO2 scrubbers that we recently covered into LA.
Right.
And put them to work.
This seems obvious, and yet, because by the way, the only thing that we were talking about the last time was, well, if you just put an air filter up there, then when it rains, it's all going to drop onto the ground. Nobody will be happy with that. Well, those things are an answer.
Yeah, those things are an answer. It's not a filter. Nothing will be just dropping to the ground.
Right.
And people being unhappy about it. There won't be, they won't damage the white streets of Los Angeles.
Peeler. They're clearly the white streets of Los Angeles.
Right. So, anybody who may have missed that previous episode, LA's painting their streets white.
They are.
I'm not being racist.
No. Or kidding.
Or am I kidding? They're painting their streets white.
Or exaggerating. Seriously, they're running around painting streets white.
So, because we have plenty of new people since we made that particular episode.
So true. Anyway, before we get caught up on past episodes and mocking California and, well, okay, we're going to get caught up on mocking California.
Well, that's what today's about.
That's fair. So, we may have some school problems in California. I think we've talked about this
a few times.
Once or twice.
We've talked about a few problems, yeah.
We're not necessarily the worst schools in the nation. We're something like 47.
I thought we were in the 30s.
Well,
the last time that we were corrected.
That I do believe that was the argument at the time. Well, Don, it's not 47, it's 39.
I think we were saying that we were like dead last, and it was 37. Is the place that we're in.
Could be. Regardless, there is no time at which California has good schools.
Apparently not. No.
None. And there is no argument that we ever have. Maybe that we ever had, but certainly not anytime recently. And I will roll that right on back to the 90s. We're not competing for a top 10 position. We're not competing for a top 20 position. Maybe we're in the top 30 position. That's as good as we get.
Apparently.
Even by arguing commenters whom I seem to recall having corrected back then, but I don't remember what I said. So, moving right along.
Yeah.
We have a new plan.
We do.
And this time, we're gonna fix the schools.
How?
Well, we have kind of a garbage graduation rate, right?
Okay.
Depends on what year and who you talk to, but 60-70% most of the time. I know they like to drag out something like 2007. We had something like a 91% graduation rate that one year, but all the surrounding years have been garbage.
Gotcha.
So I don't know what happened in 07, but we probably should do more of that.
Right.
But that's not what we're doing. Because you see, we have learned that if you take children out of the classroom, they don't graduate.
Okay.
I mean, this is obvious, right?
Right.
That's why your kids have to go to school. This is the whole spiel of why we once upon a time had truancy officers.
Right.
Therefore, we shouldn't suspend disruptive children ever.
Okay, so how do we intend on taking care of disruptive children?
By not suspending them.
That's not taking care of the disruption. How do we intend to take care of disruption so that an entire class is not having their learning interrupted, as opposed to a single student?
Well,
Or is this their new version of No Child Left Behind?
yeah, kind of. And by new version, I mean it's not that new because late 90s, I think, we made it illegal to suspend children kindergarten to third grade.
Okay.
And so this has already been a policy just for younger children because we're now going 4th to 8th. And as of, I believe, January 1st, 2025, it will be kindergarten to 12th grade the entire time you're in school. You cannot be suspended for disruptive behavior or any other subjective offense.
All right, how about destructive behavior?
Well, maybe, I guess. I don't know.
Because, I mean, I've seen some recent videos of some kid going ape in class and just, like, picking up computers and monitors and chucking them around the room.
Well, I mean, look, so what? If you take that child out of school, they're more likely to have contact with law enforcement and not graduate. We need to get rid of the school-to-prison pipeline, Peter.
Oh, so they're being racist.
No, that part comes next.
Okay.
The
Well,
part
no. Everyone knows that when we talk about the school-to-prison pipeline, that is only ever brought up in reference to the African-American population.
That's true. And that is exactly what they do immediately thereafter. This disproportionately affects the students of color and those of the LGBTQ community.
So you're saying, for whatever reason, somehow, we can't effectively get these people to behave themselves?
Well, I mean, clearly we can, and that's why we're not going to suspend them.
No, clearly we can't, and that's why you're making it illegal to suspend them.
But Peeler, they could go to jail.
Which will teach them that they should probably behave themselves in a more civilized manner.
No. See, once they go to jail once, that's it. They're effectively in prison forever.
Oh, so there's no such thing as rehabilitation in prison.
Well, maybe.
And at that point in time, what you're saying is that when we sentence someone to prison, the first meal we should give them is lead.
Maybe.
Because they're forever ruined.
But we could stop all of that if we just never suspended them to begin with.
No. I'm sorry. I've gone to some rough schools where if they knew they were not going to get in trouble for acting up, you're going to see the incidences of assaults on teachers and staff skyrocket.
Well, yeah, but I mean...
At which point in time, the teacher will not be suspending them. They'll be calling the police for assault, and they'll be going to jail anyway.
Oh, well, no, because that's against school policy anyhow.
Okay.
So, we can't be calling the cops, right? Because these poor children need to be able to learn and become productive members of society.
Well, they need to learn to be civil. That's a parent's job, not the school's job.
Well, I mean, but if the parents aren't going to do it, we do already have these teachers.
No.
Didn't you see Dangerous Minds in the 90s?
Yeah, I
Everyone is just one cool speech away from being like, I'm going to be Mozart, bro.
It's not how that works. I'm sorry, all that stuff starts in the home. Period. By the time they get into high school or everything like that, the core elements which makes up a person who he's going to be for the rest of his life is already concreted there in place.
Well, that's not true. I mean, there are plenty of people who make major changes in midlife. I mean, we even, when we don't approve of them quite so much, we even call it a midlife crisis.
Right. But it's a very large and traumatic thing.
Well,
how is the school supposed to facilitate this if we're having this type of disruption?
Again, didn't you see Dangerous Minds in the 90s?
And those speeches are garbage. It's not going to work that way.
They're going to come in and they're going to say great things. They're just going to go, you can do it, bro.
We've been trying that for the last 40 years, and it hasn't worked yet.
Well,
is this like communism? We just haven't tried it the right way yet?
What you don't understand is during those 40 years, you were allowed to suspend kids between 4th and 8th grade. And if we didn't do that, then everything would work out.
Oh, so what they're saying is we're going to force the teachers to actually to parent these children because their parents won't do the job themselves.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because that's the only way I see this working out, is that the teachers now have to become their parents because they can't send them away.
Yeah, but, I mean, look, man, didn't you see Dangerous Minds in the 90s? She, left the school to check on these kids, to see what happened when the one dropped out, and all this other stuff. And that's how it's going to work.
No, it's not. That's a work of fiction.
And?
It's called a fantasy, where things happen the way the scriptwriter says they're going to happen, not how they would actually happen in real life. We're trying to deal with that.